Let's talk about President Joe Biden. We have such an unusual situation happening in the 2024 presidential race, and particularly within the Republican primary, that Joe Biden really needs to do only one thing to win in 2024, and that is to not screw up. David, screw up. That's not very precise language. What I mean specifically is that Joe Biden needs to avoid self-inflicted errors, and he will have, I believe, a relatively clear path to re-election in 2024, despite all of the criticisms I've had of Joe Biden, despite concerns among many about his age. If he can manage not to, quote, screw up, I believe that he is going to get reelected. Now, you might be thinking, David, that's very obvious. How does that count as any kind of political analysis at this point in time? Of course, he shouldn't mess up. But let me explain why this is so crucial in this particular situation. First of all, what about problems that aren't Joe Biden's doing? Without ignoring the human tragedy of crises, we know from looking at history that often major crisis events like 9/11 help the president in power, to the extent that George W. Bush did not heed warnings about 9/11. Like, we can talk about to what degree 9/11 could be blamed on Bush to some degree. That's not what I'm trying to do today. But the point is, after 9/11, the country rallied around Bush, and he had a record high approval before invading the, quote, wrong country and squandering the approval. So Joe Biden doesn't have to worry from a political perspective about tragic events beyond his control. He should, of course, work to prevent any tragedy that is preventable, without a doubt. But we're speaking politically here. So then you get to the Republican Party. Biden doesn't have to be amazing to win in 2024. He has to be better than the alternatives. He has to be more stable than the alternatives. And the alternatives are as much of a mess as I have ever seen. The Republican Party is in disarray. There is no coherent vision. There is no coherent agenda. You have a party divided between, do we want more Trump, as the Magadonians or Magats do? Or do we realize that Trump has been a disaster in 2018, in 2020, in 2022, and we have to go a different way? Either way, you have a Republican Party that mostly exists publicly to oppose what Biden does and say it's all terrible and do anti-woke culture war nonsense. Many still loyal to Donald Trump, now under 2 indictments for classified documents federally, and then the hush money situation in New York, possibly more forthcoming indictments. And then he's running again, despite the fact that he is not particularly popular nationally. He is still extraordinarily popular as the cult leader that he has become among the MAGA people. He's actively trying to sabotage any potential rivals. And in the meantime, you actually have a pretty solid Republican candidate by the old standards of the party in Chris Christie, who is polling at last check. Chris Christie is polling, where is he? 1.2%. His big announcement last week got him from 1% to 1.2%. So Biden can win simply by not messing up. The economy has to be okay, and it is. People have to believe that, but the economy has to be okay, and it is. He has to be decent. He has to be stable, and that's basically what we need from Biden in order to see him win. And if you look at recent highly rated general election polls nationally, you see Morning Consult from a few days ago. You see Biden's leading DeSantis by 3 and Biden's leading Trump by 2. These are not blowout numbers at this point in time, but it is really important to understand that what's going on in the Republican primary may dissuade turnout in a way that is not reflected in the polls. And the presence of Trump as the nominee, who seems like a shoo-in at this point, although we'll see what happens, okay? I'm keeping an open mind. At this point, Trump seems like a shoo-in. If Trump is the nominee, there is an intangible group of people that will come out and say, I'm not that engaged in politics, but we can't have Trump back again. And that is not reflected in the polls either. So my sense right now is that Joe Biden, if he doesn't get in his own way, has a relatively unobstructed path to re-election. Whether I love Joe Biden as a candidate is irrelevant. You all know that I would like to see a different candidate if it was up to me, but I am also going to give you analysis that is based on what we have. And there is no indication. I mean, I don't want to be dark, but unless Joe Biden dies, he's going to be the Democratic nominee. I want debates. I want candidates. I would love the DNC to hold debates. They're not going to. It's not up to me. I can't do anything to change that. That is my sense of this race right now. And over the next 48 hours, we will see Donald Trump go to Miami, get arrested, booked, arraigned once again. He will then speak from Bedminster tomorrow night. We're going to cover all of it. And we are going to see, how do the other Republican candidates react to that? How does Joe Biden react? I assume Joe Biden will continue saying absolutely nothing about it, which I like. I like that Biden is saying, I don't have anything to do with this. Independent prosecutors and investigators are doing what they think they need to do based on the evidence. I like Biden staying out of it and governing. That is the starkest and most productive contrast that Joe Biden can provide at this point in time. Don't screw up. Could always say that that's what they need to do, but it is so particularly important right now. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you agree with this assessment.